I'm Michael Jacobsen and welcome to the latest episode of the Business of Creativity. Today we meet with theatre impresario Tristan Baker, who's been responsible for some of the West End's most famous shows, including Footloose, Flashdance, Lazarus, a story of David Bowie's life, and The Railway Children. As a theatre producer, Tristan operates in what is one of the most important creative sectors in the country, that is bringing in tens of millions of pounds economically and untold benefits culturally. Yet, it's a sector which is totally misunderstood in terms of its economics. Let's see what Tristan Baker has to say about the business of creativity. Tristan Baker, welcome to the Business of Creativity.
Thank you. Very good to be here.
Tristan, you produced some of the most famous shows in the UK. You've got Footloose, you've done Flashdance, Lazarus, the David Bowie musical, Railway Children. Do you consider yourself an entrepreneur? How did this all come about?
Yes, absolutely an entrepreneur. If the definition is probably can't work for anybody else, that's that's where I would be. Yeah, I'm sure
I think that's one of the definitions.
I'm sure I'm technically
unemployable.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely an entrepreneur. I think we take such a massive risk putting on a show. You have to put everything into it. You have to do everything before that opening night. I suppose it's the absolute definition of impresario, entrepreneur, trying to create something out of nothing and see if the great British public agree with you and if they'll buy a ticket.
I think what you said about creating something out of nothing is interesting, because my definition of entrepreneurialism is that an entrepreneur does create something out of nothing, and then 6 months later, a year later, you have a living, breathing baby being the business.
Absolutely, and I think when if you take a specific show for an example, take our Bob Dylan show that we've just opened. We first spoke to Bob Dylan's management and said, would he be interested in using the catalogue in creating a show? That was over 4 years ago, and then we commissioned Conor McPherson 3.5 years ago, and then the workshops and the getting the right theatre and the right team. And so 4 years later, we're finally opening the show at the Old Vic. And that yes, of course, you start off with Bob's extraordinary, iconic catalogue, but actually, what do you do with that? How do you present that? How do you do it? So that really is, you've created a show out of nothing, and it takes a long time. It takes a long time before you even get to the first night of ticket sales.
And what's your typical entrepreneurial process in putting something together? Because a lot of business people, a lot of entrepreneurs get really bogged down in business plans and spreadsheets, all of which are, of course, very important for the business side of things.
Vitally important.
Yeah, but we've heard stories about the founder of the Ministry of Sound who was driving past some rundown garage or warehouse and said, hey, that's a great place for the Ministry of Sound. Sally Green, owner of the Old Vic Theatre, similar story, driving past the Old Vic, it's for sale. Hey, let's go back and run the numbers on the napkin and see if it works. What's the degree of gut feel and artwork?
I think it's absolutely gut and love. For me, I've learned that it's so hard to do that I have to love it. Because if I'm doing it as an exercise, it doesn't work. Putting on a show and making it a success are two different things. I think putting on a show is so hard to do. Making it a success, I think, is up to whether people want to come and see it or not. So absolutely, it's gut. Do I love it? Do I think other people will love it? And then once I've got to that point, I then start allowing all of the proper business cash flow plans to come into it. Because at any point, if those don't add up, there's still no point doing it. This is what I call the eternal producer's paradox. A producer, a creative producer, wants to put on the best show possible. So if you want to have a chandelier or a real helicopter or a flying car, we all want that.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, if you sell all your tickets and you still can't pay for that, there's no point doing it.
That's right.
So that is the eternal paradox of
it's commercial theatre.
It's commercial theatre. You want to do the best possible creative show that you possibly can. At the end of the day, you've still got to pay for it. And so that is where that balance between gut feel, love, excitement for a show balances out with, are the numbers going to work? Is the business plan correct? And all of those sides of things. And that sometimes aligns. A lot of the time when we're in planning and development, that doesn't align, and you have to stop it, no matter how much you love it or what the show you think it's going to be. If it can't stack up commercially, you just can't do it as a commercial producer.
Yes.
So it's tough. It's a tough balancing act.
Yes, and a lot of creatives across the whole spectrum of the creative sector I believe there's a paradigm where a lot of them believe that money is a dirty word. There's a struggling performer, struggling artist mindset, and a lot of them either think that they can't make money from doing what they love, or there's some kind of blockage. What you've just talked about there is really apt about the fact that, you know, you are pursuing a creative pursuit, but yet of course there's some give and take, because at the end of the day you want to pay the bills, you want to have food in your belly, and you've chosen to do a commercial pursuit. What do you say to the startups and to other people out there who are doing what they love but who are perhaps working a second or a third job because they haven't yet worked out that it's possible to pay the bills?
It's difficult, it's very difficult, and you use the word commercial, and I think that sometimes in theatre is used as a dirty word, whereas in fact I think it's the whole basis of the commercial sector in theatre. It has to add up. Yes, in this country we're very, very lucky that we have a large subsidised sector in theatre where, of course, it still has to add up, and they've got to, you know, subsidised theatre companies still have to run their books even tighter, but they are given the licence that they can put on projects that can lose money. They're budgeted to lose money. So that's a wonderful that we have in this country that lots of countries don't have. However, I work in the commercial sector, and commercial is not the dirty word. Commercial is actually just the description of it.
Yes.
Pure and simply, the books have to add up.
Yes.
You know, the income has to equal the expenditure. Hopefully more.
Yes.
So when you get a creative person who hasn't got a grasp of finances, I don't actually expect them to. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't want to stop their dreaming, and I wouldn't want to stop their creativity by imposing a budget on them. I see that as my job and my team's job, my production manager and things, to be able to realise their vision in a way that works. And I think sometimes we've seen theatre shows, where they've had unlimited budgets, and actually the results have not been creatively exciting.
Yes.
I think in theatre in particular, not necessarily maybe in film or television, but in theatre in particular, I think there have been those moments when you're sitting in a theatre with 1,000 other people, and you know, you can hear a pin drop and the hairs on the back of your neck go up, and that's not to do with how much money's on stage. That's to do maybe with a single light and the elements all coming together, and just that in that moment. So when someone says this show requires millions of pounds, well, that's fine if that creative vision is deserving of millions of pounds, because there may well be another way of delivering that vision that doesn't cost the money. So I think, you know, yes, we are absolutely in a commercial industry. I think there are many creatives out there who don't understand that, who actually shy away from that, and that's fine as long as we can protect them and still deliver it.
Yes, and in so doing, continue to do it again and again, continue to employ people, pay taxes.
Well, that's the other thing, of course, is that, you know, there has to be, because, you know, a commercial theatre keeps the industry going, you know, keeps the industry, puts on these shows, puts on shows that sell tickets, which then enables you to take the risk on the shows that maybe you don't think are you know, you're going to have to take a punt on. And that's the beauty of it.
And you mentioned your team earlier. What does your team look like? How do you get them together and get them to support your vision for your company?
Well, again, with me, it's things that you have to learn through time and through doing it and through making the mistakes. But for me, the most important is that I'll only really work with people I like. Life is too short. I've worked many times with people who I don't really like, who are very difficult to work with. And, you know, as much as they might be geniuses, actually, at the end of the day, it's not worth it.
Yes.
It's just not worth it for everybody's sanity and peace of mind. So now I have a core team who I just love working with, who inspire me, who I learn from every day, and that's the most important. And then when we go, because obviously it's a freelance business essentially, so when we go to creatives, we're employing them on a freelance basis per project, per show, and you get to learn that where people's strengths are, where people's weaknesses are, what the team is, who works well together, because I think the vast majority of these shows fall apart if the people aren't communicating. You'll be amazed the politics that goes on behind the scenes in the theatre, where one department won't talk to the other, and then of course how can you possibly come up with
the business? Yeah,
how can you possibly make it work? So for me, it's really, do I get on with them? Do they inspire me? And do they have something that I think I don't have? because otherwise I might as well just do it myself.
Do it
So,
yourself.
yeah, that's the, you know, I suppose that's the old producer
Yes.
being that megalomaniac. You know,
Yes.
you always think you can do it better. So what I love is people who show me time and time and time again, actually, no, I can't do it.
Yes. And what does a producer do? Jay, what's your typical work week look like?
Well, what's wonderful, what I love about producing is there is not a typical work week. I mean, it can be anything. You know, you have the glamour of an opening night one day, and then you have, you know, you've got to go and trek the length and breadth of the country to go and see one of your touring shows. But I suppose a general day-to-day for me, it works on sort of two levels. One is the macro overview. What show are we going to be putting on in 3-4 years' time?
Mm-hmm.
So that's all about development, getting rights, commissioning shows. Where are we going to be? What theatres are we going to be in?
So you work that far out?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you know, to do touring, you've got to be at least 18 months in advance.
Mm-hmm.
And for new shows, it's going to take at least 3 or 4 years to create something new. But also, you've got that day-to-day moment. Our leading actress has broken her leg. Who's going on tonight?
Yes.
The musical director's hasn't turned up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how are we going to sell more tickets? So you also have a micro management down to the last penny of what is going on and how we're going to achieve these shows today, as well as what are we going to do in 4 or 5 years' time.
Yes.
So that to me is fantastic. That, you know, there is never a dull moment. There's always something going on. There's always a challenge.
Yes.
And you know, that's part of the job.
And you touched on your marketing is one of the things that you're focusing on. How has social media and you know, such Facebook ads and all this area affected the way theatre shows are marketed? Because theatre shows in London, obviously, it's an industry that attracts millions of people each year from around the world who come to London to go to the shows. But how do you market your shows?
Well, I mean, theatre in general is 10 years behind everything else anyway. So we're very, very slow as an industry to react to anything. I think, you know, obviously digital marketing has transformed the way that you do things. I don't think that theatre shows have actually caught up with the realities of what you can achieve digitally, you know, and I think that probably comes from ego. As a producer, we like to open the Sunday Times Culture and see an ad in the Sunday Times. Does it sell any tickets? I don't think anybody knows. It probably doesn't. You know,
feels good to see it.
It feels good to see it. So that's something that I think as an industry we're really slow. We here absolutely use as much digital marketing as we possibly can, which is all of the, you know, the programmatic and the retargeting and the, as you say, the Facebook, the social. I mean, Google in itself, all of that search is huge, and it's something that we're pushing more and more. And I think if you looked even 5 years ago at our marketing spend and our marketing budget, how much percentage was on that digital, that's growing at an exponential rate. And it would not surprise me. I don't think any show's done it yet, but it won't surprise me when a show says we are only spending on digital, and you stop doing the ads in the tube or the ads in the paper.
Interesting to see how that plays out. I love the ads in the tube.
I mean,
they're probably the ones that I see the most.
Yeah, exactly. And I think outdoor in London is important because, you know, there's a huge tourist market that's in there for the day. You've got to compete. But I think there's other ways of getting them as well.
Yes.
And like all of these things, you know, if your show's a hit, marketing is easy. If your show's not selling, I think no matter how many posters you put up, the public aren't going to come. So, you know, it's
the trend is obvious, isn't it?
Exactly. It's all reinforcing the fact that people want to see a show.
Yes.
And because it's limited, you know, if it's 1,000 seats, that's such a limited product, is that if it works and it's sold out, then that begats, you know, word of mouth, and that sort of generates its own trend. You've got to get to that sellout point.
Yes.
Though.
Now, I'm sure if you were sitting in a cafe in London somewhere and you were talking to the waiters and waitresses, perhaps in Soho, you'd find a vast majority of them are actors and actresses, and if you told them you're a producer, you'd probably be bombarded with requests to be in the next show. The industry is an interesting one where obviously the actors and actresses who are the cogs in the wheel of shows at any one time, many of them are unemployed, who themselves are engaging in the industry out of pure passion. What would you say to, as a very broad comment, if you were in such a situation, to actors and actresses and to any person in the creative sector who are all equally important to the putting on of the show, but who unfortunately none of us can employ at any one time? How can they focus? How can they progress their own?
It's hard. I mean, in theatre is such a tough industry because there is so many people who want to do it, who are passionate and who are fantastic, and there's so relatively few jobs for them. You know, so when we do a casting, we get thousands and thousands of submissions, and we might have 10 10 roles in the ensemble to do. So that can be very, as an actor, it can be incredibly difficult when you go to an audition and you get a no, and you keep doing that and you get a no. And what I say to actors is that often it's nothing to do with them. Often they are filling the director's role, so that if the mix is not there, if they're not the right size, it's often it's not about their talent. Obviously, if you're talented, you're going to work. If you've got something and you keep going, you will work, because I do believe that talent wins through. I think that there are some people out there who are very good at getting out and about and being in the right place at the right time. You know, a lot of this industry is luck, being in the right place at the right time, but that's not going to happen if you're at home sitting on your sofa.
Yes.
I think it was Gary Player who said, you know, the more I practice, the luckier I get.
Right.
And it's true.
Yes.
You know, the more you work, the more you get out there, the more you are going to be in the right place at the right time. And that's, you know, just getting to auditions. It's hard to get up, to go to an audition, to be told no, to then go and do it again. But I think, you know, the actors who I've seen who have kept going, it does come to them if they've got the talent. If you haven't got the talent, as I found out very early on, I decided to not become an actor and to do something else. And I think, you know, sometimes it helps if you realise, like I did,
yes.
You're not going to be an actor, so do something else.
Realise what hole you fit into, and
exactly.
what box you fit
exactly.
into. We talked earlier about retirement. I think we both agree that neither of us want to ever do that. What is your vision for your own personal business? You've got a lot of projects, obviously, within the business, and then on top of that, because you are running a commercial organisation, you've got Runaway Entertainment as the business. What's your vision for pursuing that? What drives it? What do you tell your staff as to why they should support the overall vision of your business going forward?
Well, I think we are a content Runaway Entertainment is content and IP. That's where we're looking at is what are our shows going to be, and how are they going to work around the world and for a long period of time. And of course, no one knows that. No one knows the formula. You know, many people have hit on that formula, but nobody, you know, there are so many times where you see a show that you think is going to work and it doesn't. So when we get that, and we haven't yet, when we get that big show that goes around the world, I can absolutely see us continuing to do this with other projects. You know, we are quite diverse. We have a huge spectrum of, you know, different projects, and what we see in the future, and maybe in 5-10 years' time, is doing this but on a larger scale. You know, we do put on shows in the West End, we build our own venues, we put on shows in our own venues, but I can see us doing that across the board in different territories. And, you know, I think it's always good to think big, and if at some point we need some help or some investment, I think we'd take that on board and have a look at that. But at the moment, we're absolutely focused on putting on great shows that people want to see and that have the potential to not just be in the UK.
Sounds like a perfect formula. Tristan Baker, thanks for being on the Business of Creativity.
Thank you so much.